Well, hi everyone, Michael here from Christ of England. Today I'm going to give a positive vision for the United Kingdom. And I see a lot of videos online by UK content creators basically complaining about the state of the United Kingdom. And everybody knows our country's messed up, but nobody has any solutions, any answers, or a positive vision for our country. And that's the reason I am doing this video. And I believe I am best qualified to give the vision because I'm truly reborn in Christ and I've had a spiritual awakening. I know the nature of God, the Father, the true nature of Christ, and how our society should be run. And I'm going to give a positive vision here. And first and foremost, the most fundamental and the most depth part of our life is the spiritual foundation. The reason our country and our world is going into such a bad state is because we've lost spiritual connection to ourself, most importantly, within ourselves, and obviously to our spiritual Father. And we've fallen into materialism and nihilism. And our society is based in get, me, ego, rather than a spiritual soul connection to ourself, our Father, and the collective whole. So the duty should be to the spiritual values and of service to the spirit rather than service to the flesh. And once we get a spiritual revolution, everything else will fall into place. So the spiritual revolution is the most important thing. Forget about politics and the economy, all that stuff will pale into significance. As soon as we get the spiritual thing sorted, everything else will fall into place. And then something like education. What's the vision for education? Our education system was created decades ago, basically to create cogs in the financial system. So the education system isn't about creating spiritually awakened people, happy people, joyful people, people who learn truth and betterment of society. Is simply just to make you a slave in the system. Even the universities, look at the state of students. They go in relatively innocent and they come out brainwashed idiots and they get 50,000 in debt for the privilege. So then you're a debt slave. It's all part of the financial system where everybody's a mercenary or a cog in a system. That's why everybody's depressed and miserable. And a classic example of how the education system is corrupt is look at health. The health system is based around selling pills, so the big pharmaceutical company. So the education system isn't going to teach people in university about the benefits of fasting and eating right to heal yourself. They don't want to do that because there's no profit in that. They want to teach you about pay for our pills. We've come up with a new pill. And it's not to say that all pills are bad. Like, I understand aspirin and a lot of other pills are good. But ultimately, if you get your nutrition right, everything else will generally fall into place. That's just an example of how the education system is corrupt. Not to mention the fact that they're brainwashing people into the communist mindset so that they're brainwashed to be commies rather than men and women of Christ. And not Christians, but men and women of Christ. There's a big difference between the two. And that basically is also encapsulated in health. So, as I said, our health industry is based towards keeping the big pharmaceutical companies rich. Whereas if we got better nutrition and we implemented fasting regimens for our people, trust me, 80 to 90% of people's health problems would disappear overnight. Just look at the state most spiritual people these days are getting obese. But with good nutrition, we'll solve all our problems. So that's a positive vision for our education system and our health system. And number 4 I put here is joy. Growing up in the 90s, things were so much more joyful. Even like in the morning, before I used to go to school, there was the big breakfast. I don't know if you remember the big breakfast, but it was fun, it was light-hearted. On a Saturday morning, you had Soccer AM, and everything was joyful. The great comedic shows, you had like Only Fools and Horses, and everything was fun. But with subversion, as part of the demoralization tactics of communism, is it subverts every part of our society. So in the morning, instead of watching a big breakfast and having fun, every channel is news, demoralising you with the news. Good Morning Britain, BBC News, 24-hour news. And they're just arguing and complaining. They'll get people on each side and they'll fight each other and argue. And everybody's arguing, angry and demoralised. Rather than having a 1-minute news update, this happened, that happened. Anyway, back to the show where they just have a laugh and fun. So we need to bring back a sense of joy. The next point is migration. A lot of people are complaining about migration, rightly so. But what is the positive vision for migration? It's very simple, and a lot of people talk about this. What we want is our country to be minimum, I think, 90 to 95% British native people. So ethnically British, whose family heritage goes back generations within England and Britain. and then have 5 to 10% for migration. So it should be like minimum 90%. It can't go below 90% of native people. And that should be for all countries, not just for the United Kingdom, because ultimately the spirit comes first. So we judge people by their spirit first. So just because somebody's not English doesn't mean they're any less, because every country has to have the same plans for migration. And I still love all people of the world. I have no hatred towards these people. I think the problem with a lot now is their migration policy is based on hating everybody. Oh, too many Indians, or hating everybody. Mine is not. I don't hate. I love everyone, but every country should maintain 90% homogeneity, just for the health of the nation, especially with the spiritual darkness time we're in, because people aren't spiritually wise to handle multiculturalism. If we lived in a golden age of spiritual connection to the Father, and we didn't have Abrahamic faiths where Jews, Christians, and Muslims all believe in their own death cult, then it would be a lot easier. Multiculturalism could somewhat work. Next point is the economy. Now, how are we going to base our economy? I believe, they're trying to get a central bank digital currency because then they have total control. What I believe is we need to decentralize our economy as much as possible. So if you implemented something along the lines of a Bitcoin or a gold standard, again, with a central bank digital currency, now don't get put off by the idea of a central bank digital currency. If it's done from the right people, it'll be fine. But the currency would be backed by Bitcoin and gold. And then you could, because those assets are not inflationary, like when our government print money, it becomes inflationary. Without that, if you had a deflationary asset, you wouldn't need usury in terms of giving loans with interest. We could remove all that. So if somebody buys a house for £400,000, they only pay £400,000 back. Now, I'm also saying I don't have all the answers when it comes to these ideas, and some of the things I say may not be technically correct, but that's when I would get the best intelligent financial minds to come up with a financial system that would be possible. Because it's ridiculous that you pay for a house. Let's say you buy a house for £300, 300,000, a house or a flat for 300,000, you end up paying 600,000 back. So the bank basically get 300,000 for free. It's absolutely ridiculous. Whereas what should happen is you should pay the money to like a central bank, and then you only pay back what you paid. And that's where the nerds would come in. The financial nerds would come in. They'd be able to implement or come up with a system that would do that. And that would make things so much more easier. Because at the moment, people go to work. Let's say you work Monday to Friday, 5 days a week. You're probably spending 2 to 3 days working for interest to the banks, for illegal migration, for war, for the big pharmaceutical company. If we got this down, people are stressed out. If we sorted our society out, people who work 5 days a week, number one, your work life would be a lot less stressful. And you'd have a lot more money in your pocket rather than giving the money to everybody else. And you could even probably work 3 days a week. Not that I'm saying it's necessarily you'd have to, but you could probably work 3 days a week and have a better life than what you do now, working 5 days a week, stressed out all your work time. We could completely change that around. And the final point, this is the second most important point that ties in with the spiritual point, is that we need a long-term thinking. And I call it Operation 2050, where you have duty, not you only live once, YOLO. Everybody has this idea. Because we've fallen away from the spirit into the flesh, everybody's like, you only live once. You've got to go on as many holidays, get as much money, and who cares about the future because I'll be gone. It's one thing that you hear a lot of old people say, is when I'm trying to tell about we need to sort our country out, a lot of 70, 80-year-olds I speak to, not all, a lot of brilliant ones we have who are fighting for the country, but they'll say, I'll be dead in 10 years, so it's not my problem. But that's not the attitude, and it's not the attitude that's been had throughout history. What the people realise is we have a sense of duty, and it's our job to make sure that our country is better for the next generation, and we need long-term thinking. Rather than thinking, I've got to live for the moment, I've got to make the most of my one life. Yes, you do have one life, but it's not the flesh. You have one life of the spirit. And now I'm reborn of the spirit, I'm eternal, and my duty is not about fulfilling the needs of my flesh. I haven't had a holiday in 15 years abroad. I've had I literally haven't had a holiday. I've had one stag do where I went to Hamburg, that was it. And a few weekends in the UK. So I don't serve the flesh, I serve the spirit. And in the spirit, you have a sense of duty. You look at the youth now, and I think, God, it's a mess. I want to make their world better for them when they grow up. So the babies now, my friends are having babies now. I look at them thinking, God, if we carry on the trajectory, by the time we get 2050, the world is going to be an absolute mess and in darkness for them. That's why I've implemented Christ's vision of Operation 2050 for the UK, so that those babies now are going to grow up in a much better country than what we currently have. And that's our duty. It's of the spirit. You look at their souls rather than the flesh and only caring about the flesh. We need to, and that's the importance of a spiritual revolution. Because once we get the spirit right, believe me, everything will fall into place. Everything will make sense. And it's like a great remembering. You know, when you can't remember someone's name and then someone says it, you remember. That's what happens when you're met with the truth of God and Christ. When somebody is of the truth and they speak, it will resonate with you. Maybe what I'm talking about is resonating and this remembering of what the truth is. And you won't hear this from your local Christian preacher because they're blind fools, whereas I follow Christ the same way that Jesus does, and it resonates with you and resonates with me. So that is the positive vision. We can make our society better. Schools can be fun. The teachers will enjoy their time. We'll have healthy people again because we'll have good nutrition. People will be happy and joyful rather than demoralised under communism. We'll have sensible migration and law and order as well. That's another important thing I haven't put on. There's so much more to this. But law and order. Our country is a mess. People get away with everything. The righteous need to be strong and powerful, and evil need to fear good. Right now, evil is running amok, and that can be sorted out. The economy, our economy is a joke. We need to sort that out. And why the wise people can sort it out, not the mercenaries and the merchant bankers. And we need long-term thinking, Operation 2050, I call it, of Christ. So that's the positive vision for the UK. And that's why I want you to join the Christ of England, because we're going to make things better. And we've got 25 years or so to do so. And we can make it happen without a shadow of a doubt. This is just early days. And I've spent 15 years waking up and learning. But now's the time for action. As I say, we can't sit around complaining anymore. So if you're following YouTubers who all they do is complain and make content for you to be outraged so that they can get rich and YOLO rather than making the country better, unsubscribe from them. Come and join the Christ of England. Come and support us, because at time I'm going to need volunteers to get out there and leaflet, spread the message, wake as many people up as possible. And we can make our country better than ever before. So share this video with as many people in the United Kingdom as you can. Like it, comment below if you have any other ideas for a positive vision. And for now, God bless everybody. Stay well. We're going to make it. Goodbye.